Hey, welcome to the Hell Has an Exit podcast. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 888-699-9395 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com. All right, welcome to Hell Has an Exit. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. On this show, we interview a lot of recovering addicts, people who have stories of redemption, people who have stories of, inspirational stories. Tonight, we have Janice T. I know Janice through Rachel B., who was on the podcast before, and she messaged me and was like, you got to get my friend Janice. Oh, my God. And you live in Jacksonville, so this is kind of a drive for me, but see Rachel really highly in my life. Like, I have a lot of respect for her. So when I asked her if she knew anyone else on the podcast and she suggested you, I was really excited to do this. So welcome, Janice.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here. So I guess I'll just get into the good stuff, the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Like you said, my name is Janice. And just to give you a little bit of backstory, how I got to where I ended up as far as my addiction. Growing up, I had, my parents were married. They, from a very young age, gave me a very distorted view of God. My parents were missionaries. They met out in the mission field. They would travel all over the United States, kind of, preaching the Bible and telling people about the Lord. And so God was talked about a lot in my home. However, that was just kind of an outside appearance that they kept up because behind closed doors, my dad was extremely abusive. As a little kid, I can remember, there being a lot of pictures on the walls. And that was because my dad was covering up the holes from throwing my mom's head through them. There was times when I came home and I couldn't find my dog, and I would walk into the garage, and I don't want to call it a torture chamber, but just the garage was where my dog went when he was bad. But every time I went in there to look for him, he was either hanging by the garage rack by his throat, or my dad would stick my cats inside the shop vac and then turn it on.
Wow.
Yeah, just really cruel things and some very violent behavior that I saw from a very young age, not just with my animals, but towards my mom as well. I had a baby brother who was a baby at the time, under 2 years old. So he doesn't really remember a whole lot of it. So I remember from a very young age kind of just being the one that was taking care of him, protecting him, because I remember he would cry and I would just be holding on to him, while the abuse was going on. My grandmother would come around a lot, because she knew what was happening, but my mom didn't have the courage or the strength to leave my dad. My mom suffers from a lot of mental health issues. Severe depression. She's never been clinically diagnosed, but her behaviors, and I didn't know this obviously until later on in life, but a lot of her behaviors are definitely issues with her mental health that she has no control over, because she's not getting the proper treatment. So her and my dad together were just super toxic, just very violent, and so that was a norm in my household. And I think I was 7 when my dad, I don't even remember where we were coming back from, but we came back from somewhere. We came inside the house, and I was walking through my house to go to the bathroom. And so I had to, go through the hallway or cut through the living room, go through the hallway to go to the restroom. And when I went in, I looked down on the floor and I saw a gun there. And I had been taught, in school, don't play with guns, that was all great. And so I just stepped over it, went to the bathroom. But when I came out, I don't know what it was, but for some reason, the gun looked different to me. It looked like a toy. It didn't look like the same gun I had originally seen. And so I picked it up and I started playing with it. And my mom saw me playing with it and runs over to me, and the gun accidentally goes off and I accidentally shot my mom.
No way.
Yeah.
And my God.
Yeah.
And whose gun was this?
It was my dad's.
Why was it on the floor?
He just left it
there.
Left it there. Not on the table, but on the floor in the middle of the hallway. He just left it. And my mom was holding my baby brother in her arms, and it got her in the leg, which was less than an inch away from hitting my little brother. And of course, my dad, he didn't want to explain to the police
why the gun was on the floor.
Right. So he wouldn't let my mom go to the hospital. And
oh my God.
Yeah. He would not let her go. And he made her sit there in like complete agony, in pain, got the bullet out himself. And that was it. Thank God it didn't, get infected or anything. And of course, my dad beat the crap out of me for it, even though he was the one who left the gun on the floor.
How old were you?
I was 7. So after that happened, and I still don't know because I've never asked my mom, like, what was it that gave her the courage to say, like, okay, enough is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. But I just remember my dad packing up his stuff and leaving. And while there was some grief there was also some relief, because I knew I wouldn't have to witness, my dad beating my mom anymore, just constant arguing. And you were always living like in a state of fear, in your home. And that's, it's not a good feeling. So my dad left and they went through a divorce and did the, every other weekend time sharing plan and everything. And my grandmother started coming around more, and she would come Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to take care of my brother so my mom could work because she was now a single parent. My grandmother was a huge constant, probably the only safe, non-toxic role model that I had. And so I clinged to her. And she was like the grandmother that like baked apple pies and like put them in the, in the windowsill. And I remember being a kid and I would be getting ready for school and she would take these, she would get like yarn and she would sew a lot and knit stuff. And she would get these reindeer or animal heads, and if you squeeze them on the top and the bottom, their mouths would open up, and she would put like little candies in there, and I would find them like in my pockets and stuff. And I would be getting ready for school and I would find those, and it would just bring me like so much joy, just like the little things. And so this was probably around like, I think I was like 8. And then when I was 9, she got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which is a very, very violent form of cancer, and it takes people out quick. And this was back in the 90s. So like medicine and like radiation and chemo, it wasn't as advanced as it is now. And I mean, even today, not a lot of people can survive pancreatic cancer. So she was taken from us pretty quick. That was devastating to me, and it was devastating to my mom as well. And for a long, long time, I want to say for some years, my mom just kind of mentally checked out even more. And she just, wasn't there. Like I would go into her room and like try and talk to her, tell her about my brother, and she would just be blank. It was like I was talking to the wall. So because she had passed away, there needed to be, somebody to watch us, because my mom, again, she was a single parent, having to work as much as she can because she had a mortgage and she had kids to take care of. So she would hire babysitters, And there was this girl in our neighborhood. Her name was Jessica. And my mom had her come over and watch us. I remember, I want to say it was probably about 2 months into her babysitting us. She took me into my bedroom and took her clothes off and then took mine off and then started touching me. I'm like 9.5, 10 years old or something like that. And so for a long time that went on, probably for like about a year, and I can remember like this happening to me, being so confused, being so scared, feeling so much shame, so much guilt, thinking it was my fault, so afraid to say something. But I think a child, when something like that happens to them, they can't process what's going on, so they start acting out.
You think your mom ever knew?
Eventually she did. Yeah, she did. And that's what happened is I started acting out sexually, like in public, because I couldn't deal with what was going on, to my body. Like my mind couldn't handle it. My heart couldn't handle it. I was shattered, and I was angry. So when it finally came out in the open of what was happening, and I told, it was swept under the rug. No, the police weren't called, counseling. I didn't get none of that. I think today, like I can say kind of she did the best she could, but there's still a lot of like hurt and resentment towards that because, I was a kid. And, but anyway, so that went on and my trauma was just swept under the rug. And so I just continued to grow more and more and more into this teenager who hated herself, who hated her body, didn't like the way she felt on the inside because I couldn't deal with what had happened to me. You know, my mom continued to let men just in and out of her life, renting rooms to random men as well, which then opened the door for more, you know, more trauma, more molestation, rape numerous times.
Wow.
You know, I didn't say anything, and
This is all before like the age of what, 16?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all before the age of 16. And I didn't say anything based on my experience.
Before. You're like, I said something
Like,
before
it doesn't
and nothing
matter.
happened. So
It
why
doesn't
would I
matter.
say something now?
Exactly. So I didn't say anything, and I just kept it kind of all bottled up inside. But my behaviors and my anger were still, you know, coming out. Like I would be in school and I would fight. Like I hated men at this point, you know, and I would just pick on guys at my school and I would like beat the crap out of them, pick up like, you know, the desk and like throw it at them, you know, because I'm trying to like process and deal with this anger and this shame that I'm going through on the inside. So I would get put in like in school suspension a lot, kicked out of school, suspended, all of that. And then I finally, I just stopped going. And so I dropped out at 16, started going to a vocational school to get my GED. But I ended up meeting an older guy, and he was 22 and I was 16 years old. And I couldn't believe that he noticed me, that he, you know, was giving me attention.
Where'd you meet him at?
So I met him through a friend that I actually went to high school with. It was his older brother. I was hanging out with Chris, and then he lived with his older brother, Paul. And so I went over to hang out with Chris, and Paul was there. And like, you know, when he came home, I was like, wow, he's really, really cute. But I wouldn't even like look him in the eye, you know, and because I was just so, I was shy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he liked me. And for the first time, you know, in a long time, like I felt beautiful. So we started dating, and like I said, I was 16, and he was going to college in Orlando, which is Full Sail University, which is kind of like for digital media and 3D graphic arts and all that. So it was a 24-hour school. So like they would have class at like 2:00 in the afternoon, and then they would have it again at like 3:00 in the morning. So they were doing like a lot of drugs,
Yeah.
you know, just to stay awake. So he, you know, I would hang out with him. And by this time, like I had experimented, you know, with drinking and smoking pot and doing cocaine, and ecstasy was real big back then. You know, the whole like the rave scene was huge. And I mean, I got high, but like those, I would get bored with those drugs.
Yeah.
It wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like it didn't keep my interest at all. So I was with him. We were at one of his really good friends' house, and they were passing around like a plate, you know, with powder on it. And I didn't know what it was. And they were calling it tech. And I don't know how old you, yeah. So that was like, so that was the street slang for heroin back in the
really?
late 90s, early 2000s.
Tech?
Yeah, tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that? Where does
You
it
want to
come
get technical? I like, yeah. That's what we called it. You know, I thought it was cocaine. You know what I mean? And like growing up, you know, you went to Dare in school, and they told you, you know, they would have like that glass picture.
Like all the drugs.
Yeah, with like all the drugs in it. And I mean, but like the only thing they really ever said about heroin is just don't do it.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm with like all these grown people, you know, and I wanted to belong, because I haven't felt like I've belonged like ever in my life. And so I did it, and it made me sick to my stomach. But for the first time ever, it was like I was able to deal with everything that was going on inside of me, like all the hurt, all the anger, all the shame, just everything. And it was doable now, you know? So we did it, and I didn't say anything, but like inside secretly wanting him to say, hey, you want to do that again? You know, like the next weekend that we hung out or whatever. And it eventually got to that point.
So this is crazy. So this is a 22-year-old guy, and you're 16 and you do heroin with him? That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is. So eventually it gets to the point where he's sticking needles in my arms, you know? And before my 17th birthday, I'm almost 17-year-old girl with a heroin addiction. And extremely scared to tell my family, my parents, obviously my behavior and money's missing, and all the traits, all the things that happen that come with addiction are going on, but they just, my mom doesn't put two and two together, at all. So we go so hard. He ends up dropping out of college, losing his apartment. He had a really good job working for a third-party government that does 3D tutorials for building the Comanche helicopter to like teach the military.
Wow.
Yeah. He moves in, and I'm not 18 yet. And he moves into my mom's house, but my mom won't let him, live in my room. So he's got to live in another room in the house. Yeah. So he moves in, and that, him moving in gave us more money, so of course it got worse. And it eventually, like, it got to a point where I couldn't hide it anymore, and it was right after my 18th birthday that I came clean and told my mom for the first time that I had a drug problem. And of course, she wanted to sweep it under the rug, just pretend like what I just said to her didn't happen, and she wasn't listening to me. And I was asking her for help because I didn't know how to stop. But I think at this point, like, I just didn't want to be sick. I didn't necessarily want to give up getting high, because this was my way of, of coping and of dealing with everything. But I didn't want to be sick anymore, because this was, a habit that I couldn't maintain or afford.
Are you IVing heroin at this point?
Yes.
That's your drug of choice?
Yeah. Okay. That was my drug of choice. So and at this time I still had insurance, I was still on my mom's insurance. So she sends me down to South Florida to a program. Yeah. For a rehab. And I mean, of course I didn't stay very long. I did the detox, and I was like, I'm cured. I'm good. Let's go. I came back home, and I started using again. And my mom got to a point, my dad, by this time, he wants to kill Paul, and so Paul was like, I can't stay here anymore. Because my dad blamed him for everything, because I was a 16-year-old girl. Exactly. And he's a 22-year-old man, even though I understand addiction is addiction, and you're not, thinking clearly and whatever, but my dad didn't see it like that. So my mom tells Paul, you got to go. You got to get out. He has nowhere to go. So he moves to Seattle, Washington. And I think like him moving was how, we eventually ended up, splitting up, because he actually, he wanted to stop. He didn't want to use anymore, but I did. So he moves to Seattle, and we just kind of, go our separate ways or whatever. And I get into, the life of the street life. And here I am, a young 18, 19-year-old, white girl with blonde hair, green eyes, and freckles. And so, I mean, I was like partying all the time, and I was always around everybody. And
this is in Orlando?
Yeah. Yeah. It's in Orlando, like UCF area. And then I met a guy, and his name was Christian, and completely fell in love with this man, and he was amazing, but he smoked crack cocaine, and I had never done that before. I was still using heroin heavily and consistently, and I wanted to be around him. And the way I met him was I was hanging out with somebody, and they used heroin, but they also smoked crack, and so they called they called a drug dealer, and like Christian was riding with the drug dealer.
Oh, okay.
So in order to get him to come to me, I bought crack, but I didn't even want to do it. So he and I end up.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I wanted what I wanted.
Yeah.
So he and we end up getting together.
Who's your cute friend? Oh, call the crack dealer.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly how it went down. So he and I end up like hooking up, and I mean, we were crazy together. It was like a modern day Bonnie and Clyde. Like I could look at him and he would know what I was thinking. And when I say in this context, it's like us robbing people.
Yeah.
We would rob people left and right. I'm so surprised. Like
Like houses or drug dealers or both, all of it.
Yeah,
whatever.
and people.
And
People too.
Like walking on the street.
Well, no, not like walking on the street, but I would like post up at a gas station, you know, looking like I needed a ride somewhere.
And then rob a John or something.
Well, I mean, it wasn't a John. It was just a person.
Somebody
yeah, just a person. And like I would go into the store and I would see who's paying with cash, and they'll open up their wallet and pull out, you know, to pay. And I'd be like, oh, he's got a lot of money on him. And so I would go outside and I would just look at him. And then the guy would come out and I would say, hey, do you think you could give me a ride somewhere? I'm stranded here. And I would take them down a dark road. Well, not a dark road, but like a dead end road.
A dead end road.
And Christian would already be there waiting.
Yeah.
And he had, you know, a gun. And of course, they would give up their wallet and we would take their keys and throw them, you know, in the woods somewhere and then take off. So we did that for a long time, which I'm shocked we didn't end up getting shot, because we actually ran into somebody we robbed one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What happened?
We just gave them a very scary look, thinking, hoping that they would be scared of us.
Yeah.
And like, no, we were actually driving down the road and we're next to them in traffic. And so I look to my left and I'm like, Christian, look who it is. And he looks, and Christian looks at him, and the guy looks, and he like goes like, you know, like kind of scared. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And so we weren't too worried.
Nothing happened, yeah.
Yeah, nothing happened. So anyway, so even though like me and Christian, you know, we were, I want to say love, but it wasn't, it was just sick. You know, it was so sick. And because knowing what love looks like now, that was not love. That was just.
But at the time you thought it was.
But at the time I thought it was, you know. And I remember he and we got into a really big fight. And I had walked away from him, and I was walking down a road, and I was in front of a neighborhood, like a subdivision. And I think I had been up for like days, and I had just done like a really big shot of heroin, popped a couple Xanaxes. And the next thing that I remember is waking up in the hospital with like a catheter in me and them telling me you're 9 weeks pregnant. And I had just been in a coma for like 3 days. I had overdosed. Somebody found me in the ditch in front of the subdivision, just, you know, laying there. So I woke up in the hospital and they told me I'm 9 weeks pregnant. And I was devastated, you know, because for one, just had an overdose. Is this baby that's inside of me, did this OD and all the drugs that I've been doing, is this, you know, going to hurt
the baby?
Yeah, hurt the child. Is it going to be born with, you know, deformities and everything? And so they ended up releasing me. I go home and I'm like, all right, I'm going to get clean. You know, I'm pregnant. I care about this baby. I want to be a mom. I don't believe in abortion. So I go into my room and all I can think about is getting high. That's all I can think about. And like by this time, you know, I'm still I'm detoxing. And so I remember like just sitting in my room crying because I wanted to use so bad, but I wanted this baby to be okay. And so I remember like taking out a piece of paper and like I wrote like, I couldn't even form words at this point. And like I wrote like a prayer down to God, asking him to protect this life that's inside of me because I don't think I can stop. And so I took that prayer and I put it in a Bible, and that was it. And then I kind of went off to the races and, you know, went extremely, extremely hard. But because I was pregnant, my mom Marchman acted me, which is like a Baker Act for drug addicts, and forced me into treatment. I'm in detox. You know, they got me maintenanced out on methadone because I came in, you know, on heroin. I was in there for like 34 days, and I kept waiting to go in front of a judge because they were going to sentence me to treatment, you know, court order me. And I remember going to court, and I talked that judge into giving me outpatient, which is crazy because every single person that I had ever seen that had been pregnant
or whatever, or pregnant,
especially pregnant, you know, they're going to send you to treatment because it's not about you. It's about that unborn child, you know? And I talked him into giving me outpatient, and I didn't even go back to the detox to get my stuff. I, from the courthouse, went straight to the dope hole and got high. So which I didn't know it at the time. There was a warrant out for my arrest for a theft charge that I had done, but never got caught for, like when it happened. And I'm getting high, and then I get told like the police are looking for me. And so I start running, I'm hiding and everything. I get picked up, I get arrested, but this warrant is out of Brevard County, which is kind of like the sister county to Orlando. It's like Cocoa Beach area. And this was back in 2007. So at this point, not all the jails are dosing women on methadone if they're pregnant. Like now it's completely different. Like if you come in pregnant, even if you're not on methadone and you're on heroin, they put you on it.
Gotcha.
Because the baby, the baby going through withdrawals that could kill.
Of course.
Yeah, that could kill the baby. I get arrested in Orange County for the out-of-county warrant. So they're dosing me in the jail. Go to Brevard, and they don't. And so because they know I'm going to be withdrawing from methadone, they put me in the medical ward. And by this point, I'm like 24 weeks pregnant, which is like 5 months-ish. So I'm in the jail, and I'm literally like sitting, I'm detoxing like crazy. I'm so sick. And I'm just talking to my stomach, because I honestly felt like I was losing my mind and going crazy. And all of a sudden, I feel like this wetness. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? And it's like happening, in my pants. My water broke, and I'm bleeding. And so I start like beating on the glass. My water just broke. I'm bleeding. Something's happening. And so they rushed me to Cape Canaveral Hospital. Yeah, hospital there. And they don't have like a high risk women's pregnancy hospital. So they had to transport me in an ambulance with 2 COs back to Orlando to Winnie Palmer. So I get there, and my water had broke. They did a sonogram on the baby just to make sure she was okay. They put me on complete bed rest, put a catheter in me. I couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. And, one of those belts for the heart to continue to monitor her. Well, I didn't know it was a girl at this point in time, but monitor her heart rate. I remember just sitting there in the hospital with these 2 COs, back and forth. I mean, just every day, shift change and everything, completely miserable. And they had said to me, because I had been in Brevard for like 5 or 6 days before this happened. And they had said to me, do you want us to put you back on methadone? And I was like, no. I'm like, I've already been off of it for 6 days. Don't put me back on it. Because I was incarcerated and because I was being held on a warrant there, anytime an inmate is put into a hospital and is under the jurisdiction and the care of the jail, like they're responsible for the bill. Not only that, but they're paying 2 correctional officers to drive like an hour and a half every single day, mileage, their time, all that. They were like, this chick is too much. She's costing us too much money. Yeah. So they had an emergency hearing in front of a judge, and I was ROR'd on my charges. And I remember the CO coming from Brevard to Orlando, bringing me my property, bringing me my release papers.
And just saying you're done.
Yeah. And uncuff me. I was shackled my legs were shackled to the hospital bed. Uncuff me. And they're like, all right, Miss Tucker, you're free. So I called my mom, and I'm like, come get me. And she was like, what do you mean come get you? Your water broke. You need to stay there. I was like, no, come get me. And so I signed myself out against medical advice.
Were they trying to get you to stay? Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the doctor came in, and he's like, I'm telling you right now, he's like, if you leave, there is a 90-something% chance that your baby will die. And I didn't care. I know I wasn't capable of caring. Like the obsession was so intense and so strong and so powerful that I just wanted to go use. And so I left, and I went and got high.
And are you smoking crack at this point, or heroin, or both? Yeah, whatever.
Both. I was doing both. I was smoking crack, doing heroin, and I was shooting cocaine. So I leave, and I think it was probably like not even 4 days. I start feeling this pain in my stomach. And so I'd never been pregnant before. I'd never had a baby before. So I didn't know it, but it was contractions.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I ignored it for a couple hours because like I still wanted to keep getting high, And but it got so bad, I couldn't ignore the pain anymore, and they were closer and closer and closer. And so I go to the emergency room. They take me in, and they tell me I'm having contractions. I'm going into labor. And my first thought, of course, is give me something for the pain, But I have like drug addict
tolerance. Yeah.
Well, tolerance, not just that, but I have like, on my medical records, like
med seeking,
right.
Drug addict. Yeah.
So they treated me like crap. And that's all that they saw me as. Even though I was like legitimately in pain, they gave me something for the contractions, but it was a non-narcotic. And then they couldn't find a vein in me, so they had to like give me a PICC line in my foot. They slowed the contractions down, and they put me in my room, and they just came in and monitored me every now and then. And I remember I had gotten to a point, like my mom was like, I was being a major, I was just angry and whatever. So my mom left. She left me there. She's like, I'm not staying here with you. And so she left me. And I remember like the contractions were really close. And I was like, I think I'm about to have this baby. And so I'm like pushing the
button.
Yeah, the hospital button. Like, somebody come in here and help me. And they wouldn't come. And then finally somebody came in, and I'm sitting there, I'm screaming at them. I'm like, you have to do something. I'm like, this baby is coming. And she's like, no, you're fine. And I was so mad. And so this was a Seventh-day Adventist hospital. And so they still had bathtubs. And so I go into the bathtub and I turn on the hot water, and I'm just letting like the hot water hit my stomach because it hurts. So like like it literally feels like a shredder is in your stomach. So I'm squatting down, and I literally I go to exhale, and I drop my head, and I see a foot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I see a foot. And so I pull the emergency thing, like when you're in the bathroom and like something happens. Cord. And so they're coming in, and I'm yelling at them at this point, calling them every, cuss. I effing told you I was having this baby. You didn't want to listen to me. And she was breech. Wow. So I was supposed to have a C-section, not regular childbirth. So they put me on a stretcher. They're like taking me down to the delivery room, and they're like, you can't push yet. You can't push yet. And like when you're in labor, your body is naturally trying to get this baby out. So they're telling me not to push. I'm like, what do you mean don't push? And my body is just pushing. And so I finally get back there. The doctor gets there, and he's like, he puts my legs up, and he's like, oh, you got to push. And I'm like, wait. We're supposed to have a C-section. What about epidural? What about numbing medicine? He's like, no, you got to push now.
Jeez.
So I gave birth to her naturally, which was so painful. It was so bad.
How many weeks was she?
29.
So it's really early, right?
Yeah, a little over 6 months. She was a preemie. She was 1.5 pounds. She was itty bitty. So I remember giving birth and not hearing anything. And again, at this point, I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl, but in my heart, I knew, I already named her Kayla. And I was like, is the baby okay? Because I didn't hear nothing. And I'm thinking in my head, God's going to punish me. She's going to come out and be brain dead, or, something's going to be wrong because I couldn't stay clean. Then I heard her cry, and he said, she's perfect. And I just cried. And then after that, they put something in my IV, and, I went out. And I woke up in my hospital room a couple hours later, and my mom was there, and she had already been back to see the baby. They put her immediately into the NICU, and because she was really tiny and she wasn't developed enough to where she could hold her own body heat. So they had her under a special lamp, and they had saran wrap on her, and she was just this little burrito looking thing. And I went back there, and I looked at her, and I just cried, and that right there, with as undeserving as it was, that was God's grace in my life, because from everything that I did, I didn't deserve to have a baby. There's people out there that would love to have a child that would give that baby everything and raise them up in a good way. And here I am taking advantage of what God calls, a blessing and a gift. So I stayed in the hospital because since she was born with, they knew I was detoxing from methadone. Like they knew that I had come from jail. So there was a DCF case now open. And so to look good on my case, I didn't leave against medical advice again. I stayed until they released me. Because in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do good. I'm going to be a mom, I'm going to love this baby. But of course that didn't last, As soon as I got out, probably home for about an hour, and I'm out, back doing the same thing, getting high. And she was in the NICU for like 96 days because she had to get up to a certain weight before they would release her. And I went and saw her twice, and that's it. My mom went and saw her every single day after work, every single day. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that she did that.
What about Christian? Where's he in all this?
Getting high too.
Just totally absent.
He came twice to see her.
Are you guys using together at this point, or just no it's totally separate?
No, because after so I didn't tell you this. After I found out I was pregnant, I had also found out he had cheated on me and got somebody else pregnant. So
he cheated on you? No.
Yeah. Such a shocker. I know. Yeah, he had cheated on me.
Christian, the crackhead. Wow.
And he had gotten her pregnant, and we were like 3 weeks apart in pregnancy.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we had like, yeah, it was. We were gonna like live together and raise the babies, and of course that didn't last or work out. So yeah, so no, we were not together. He came up there like once or twice, I can't remember, to see her. I can't remember when it was, but a little bit late, like after I had Kayla, like after I gave birth to her, that girl Emily gave birth to her baby. And that baby was born with deformities.
Wow.
A lot of health issues. And I couldn't believe like that didn't happen to me, because her and I like
same thing. Drug addicts.
Same thing. And so I remember sitting at my house, and I heard the news about Emily's baby, and the baby's name was Nevaeh. My mom was like, "Don't you remember?" I'm like, "No." And so she and I didn't even know she had seen this because I didn't tell her I put this prayer in this Bible for this baby, for my daughter. She's like, "I found this," and she was like, "That's God. God protected her."
Wow. And your mom's very religious, right?
So
were both of your parents pretty religious?
They were missionaries, but if you ask me now, based on what I know about,
you're like, no way.
Well, no, it's what they were following, in my opinion, was a cult.
A cult.
Yeah, it was not Christianity, like at all. That happened, and I continued to use, and I kept getting brought back to like juvenile court. I kept getting arrested, getting more charges put on me. I would never show up. Like if I was free, I wasn't showing up to court. The only time I would show up to court is if I was incarcerated. Yeah, if I was incarcerated, that was the only time I would go. So it finally got to a point where they terminated my rights, which they should have. I was piece of crap mom. I wasn't doing anything for her. I still say this, and I wholeheartedly believe it. Like the best thing that ever happened to me was my daughter got taken from me, and the worst thing that ever happened to me was my daughter got taken from me. And she was adopted by my mom. Now I love my mom, and I'm grateful that she adopted her. However, the same woman that raised me is raising my daughter.
You're seeing the cycle happen again.
Right. And I'm seeing it, now. By this point, I'm probably like 24, 25. But I meet this girl, because I'm in my addiction, and like I can only like take care of my habit, by stealing for so long. And I meet this girl. She's in this really pretty dress, like she's got these nice heels on, and she's talking to me, and she's flashing all this money. And I'm just like, what are you doing? How do you do that? She's like, "I'm going to take you to meet somebody." And I said, "Okay." And so she's like, "I'm going to take you to meet my daddy." And I'm literally thinking her dad.
Dad.
I was so damn green. Like, you're going to take me to meet your dad? Why?
How old are you at this time?
I was like 25, 26.
25, 26, okay.
And so she takes me. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Orlando or not, but like the strip in Orlando is I drive an OBT, the trail. And so that's where she took me. She took me to the trail. That is where all of like prostitution is. Mm-hmm. This was not a prostitution situation. This was a human trafficking situation. So she takes me there, and it's this house. It's a duplex. And so there's a downstairs and an upstairs. So he's got a Puerto Rican girl in there. He's got a black girl in there. He's got a white girl in there. And all of them have kids by him, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. And so these girls are working for him. And so she brings me in, and she's like, Daddy, this is, Janice. She's going to be a part of the team. And I'm like, what is going on? And he just like looks me up and down, and he's like, oh yeah, we're definitely doing this. So he like dresses me up, puts me in some clothes, tells me.
What was this guy like?
You mean like his physical appearance or
Both.
his just demeanor?
Like his demeanor, what he looked like.
He was a black guy with gold teeth, typical street hood thug. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Slinging crack, selling girls, selling weed, Molly or ecstasy, whatever, that type of, profile. And he tells me that I'm going to a hotel at 11 o'clock tonight to go meet somebody. And not giving me details, but by this point, I'm starting to pick up what
he's pimping the girls out.
Right, what he's talking about. And I was terrified. And I'm on probation at this point too. So we go. He has some guy pick me up, take me. The girl comes with me because it was my first time, and I'm like shaking. We go in there, and she goes in there with me, and I couldn't do it. I could not do it. And she was like, look, I'm not going to tell him that you couldn't do it because he will beat you. And she's like, I'll just tell him that he didn't want you. He just wanted me. And so I said, okay. And so I told him that night when we got back, and the entire ride back, like I'm crying, because I'm scared. I can't leave. I don't know how I'm going to leave. How did I get myself into this? Mm-hmm. And I remember coming home or going back to his house, coming home and telling him, look, I have an appointment with my probation officer tomorrow. I need to go see him. I didn't have one, but this was the only thing I could come up with in my mind.
To leave, yeah.
Yeah. And so I go there and I meet with my probation officer, and I said, look, you have to go out there and tell them that I tested positive for drugs and that you're arring me. So
wow,
they'll
that's
leave.
how scared you were.
That's how scared I was. And he did that, but he didn't ask me anything after that.
He wasn't like, do you need help?
No.
He was just like, okay.
Yeah, I'll do that. So.
Yeah, I don't mean to laugh. It's just, it's crazy how like people's lives just become like pieces of paper on people's desk and.
Yeah, and just shuffle them on through. Mm-hmm. This will be extra paperwork for me, so I don't want to deal with this. Yeah. Meanwhile, people, this is someone's life. Mm-hmm. So they leave. They think I'm going to jail. And I can't even tell you who I called, but I called somebody and they came and picked me up, and I went back to like my area of town. Cause that was like west side of Orlando where they were at. I was on east side. And,
oh, wait. So you didn't go to jail? You just told them to tell them that you were going to go to jail?
Yeah, no, I didn't go to jail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no.
So you told the probation officer to tell them in the parking lot that she's going to jail?
In the waiting room.
In the waiting room? Oh my God. And he did it and didn't ask any questions?
No.
Why?
No, well, I told him I was scared for my life.
Yeah, but he never said anything.
But he never asked me any questions beyond that, Yeah. So I go home, and of course, back to the races, back to using. I had a couple more encounters with men posing as drug dealers.
But they're pimps or sex traffickers.
Right, but they're traffickers. This one guy, his name was Big Lip Chris. He actually got murdered a couple years ago. He had me in his house, and I was so dope sick. And so I was just laying there, and he was, holding the fact that, like, if you want this, you're going to have to do this. I was so sick. And so, of course, I did it, and like today, working in the anti-trafficking, movement, in order for like the legal definition for human trafficking, it's force, fraud, and coercion. And, that's under the umbrella of what he was doing.
What does that mean?
Force, fraud, and coercion. So force is violent. Fraud is by telling you, I'll provide housing for you, or I'll take care of you. Coercion is me being a drug addict and
taking advantage of a situation.
Right. Vulnerability. Okay. Yeah. Or a runaway. You know, if you don't do this, and I'm not going to, you know, feed you or, you know, whatever.
So that's the definition of sex trafficking.
The legal definition. Yeah.
Sex trafficking.
Yeah. It has to fall under those. And now when it comes to minors,
It has to be all three of those?
No.
Just one? Okay.
Just one. And when it comes to minors though, there is no, they're automatically victims.
Okay.
Automatically.
Yeah.
Because there is a difference between prostitution and human trafficking.
Sex trafficking.
Yeah, there is a difference. You know, there are people out there,
Okay.
but not saying.
So if a girl says, "Hey, I'll have sex with you for money," and then buys drugs with the money, that's not sex trafficking. That's just prostitution. But if a guy knows that a girl needs money for drugs and she's like unwillingly wants to do this, but they kind of force her or intimidate her to do it in exchange for drugs, that would be sex trafficking.
Well, no, because if you have somebody who is hooked on drugs, they're doing it for the drugs. Anybody that is deriving or benefiting from the proceeds of somebody selling their body, that is sex trafficking.
That's sex trafficking.
You got to take that classic pimp and hoe situation out of your mind, because that's not really what it, I mean, that does still happen. But that's kind of like the older days.
Thought of it.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so much more broad now. Like, these men are posing as, you know, boyfriends, that they love you. Oh, if you love me, you know, you'll go and do this. But there is an entire mental, psychological, emotional manipulation behind it. These men are very, very good at what they do. Very good. And when you take somebody who is completely broken and vulnerable and addicted to drugs, and I know for me and the girls that I work with too, I just wanted somebody to rescue me from myself, you know, and they'll pose as that, but then they'll get you in debt with them. And then they will be your only means for survival. They'll be the only ones taking care of you and the only ones beating you, you know, and breaking you down, like, psychologically, to where you feel like you can't leave.
Yeah, your property at that point.
Right. You know, and they have you trained. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome too. And you think that they care about you, you know, and which is, for me, like, to even like tap back into that mindset because of who I am today. And I was wasn't easily manipulated growing up like that. Just to think that I used to be in that mindset, like, blows my mind. Like, I'd kill somebody today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So back to the story. So you're with Big Lip Chris? What's his name?
Yeah, I was with Big Lip Chris, and like, I was so sick. He was telling me, he's like, well, you know, if you want this, you're gonna have to do this, you know? And so I did it. I wasn't with him for very long because I had gotten an infection in my blood. And I had caught a form of MRSA that was a very rare strand. And I just had sores all over me. And he wouldn't let me go to the hospital. But it got so bad that I couldn't make him any more money. You know, people were looking at me, you know, like, no, you know? And so by that point, he finally let me go. And the doctor told me that, like, if you hadn't come, you would have died. You would have gone septic and you would have died, because the poison in my blood was so, and like, that's where all these sores were coming out, because it was the poison trying to come out of my body. And so I got away from him because of that, because I was in hospital for like 8 weeks. So I get out, in and out of jail. You know, I think I went to prison once in 2009. You know, I'm sitting here and I got like 15 possession charges. I got grand thefts, possession of paraphernalias, possession of heroines, possession of cocaine, you know, just constantly in and out of jail, having so much contact with law enforcement, with judges, with state attorneys, with doctors.
What about treatment? You going to treatment a lot or not really? Or just jail?
Just detoxes, mostly jail. I would go to detox, but just to detox, and then boom, you know, I just need to clean up. I just need to clean up a little bit. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
My last encounter was with a guy. Well, it's actually started out with a girl. Her name was Carrie, and I met her in jail. And so we were in the same dorm, and then, you know, we both get out of jail, we go our separate ways or whatever. I end up running into her at a bus stop by a 7-Eleven. And I was looking for a place to stay because the crack house that I was staying at, I didn't want to stay there anymore. And she tells me, she's like, we got a room for rent at my house. You come and stay with it, you know, come rent the room. It's only $10 a day. It's a nice house. He sells dope, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, word.
Sounds like a dream.
Yeah, word. Let's do it. You know? And so I go and I walk into the house. And this guy comes, he's got a mouthful of golds, tattoos and everything. He introduces himself and he's like, my name's Smurf. Hey, I'm Janice. He was like, what's your full legal name? And I'm like, why? And he's like, because if you ever get arrested, I need to be able to get you out of jail. I'm like, okay. Give him my name, shows me the room. I'm like, sweet, sweet setup, drugs right here, a roof over my head. I'm good to go. And then he comes in and he's like, in order to stay here, you gotta work for us and you gotta buy drugs from us. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Cause I was like I had like a whole bunch of sugar daddies like on the side, you know what I mean? But with him, it had taken a turn for some of the darkest, most evil things that I've ever experienced in my life, as far as not just physical abuse from him, but when he was posting me on Backpage, the things that he was promising these people. And so like I'm at this point where I am living in a constant state of fear, on high alert at all times. Any sudden movements, I'm scared and I'm not sleeping. And the only thing I'm doing is using drugs and I'm needing more drugs just to cope with what's happening to my body and my mind. And I really feel like every time something happened, like a part of me died that I'll never get back, And that went on for too long. And I remember like coming back to the house because he would put us up in hotels and, we would have a guard or whatever you want to call him. We called him a doorman. That would watch us just to make, for our safety, but also to make sure that we didn't leave.
Run off. Or
right. But there was a lot of conditioning too, before it could get to that point. And
So how long are you with this guy?
I was with him for a couple months.
Okay.
I remember coming back to the house and that one of the other girls was there. That was Holly. And I have never seen somebody so black and blue. Like even her back was black and blue. Like he beat her so bad because she tried to leave. That terrified me. I remember he let me get a dog, a puppy. And besides the Lord, like I honestly, like it's amazing to me how our bodies are made, how God has made us to where in our minds, we can mentally check out to survive very traumatic situations. So like where you are someone who is just being saturated in trauma every single day. God, even though I wasn't saved yet, I know he was with me, giving me the strength to keep moving forward to, face another day because eventually, I would.
Would you pray at that time at all?
Pray for God to just take my life, because I think at this point, I didn't see anything past this. Like, this is what I'll be for the rest of my life. I won't be anything else, So I was like, I'd rather just die.
So I'm sure there's people out there that say like, oh, well, these girls want, like, I'm sure people say this with like the trafficking all the time. Like, oh, well, these girls want to do this stuff, or no one's putting a gun to their head, or, they're just going to, how come they go to jail and then go back to doing the same thing, So like, what do you say to like people that are saying things like that?
So there is a such thing. And I think a lot of society takes that picture, that movie Taken, and while that does really happen, people are chained down to a bed in a brothel, being kidnapped.
And forced. Like sex dolls, yeah.
Right, that does happen.
But there's a different type of chain that you don't see.
Exactly, and that is a mental and an emotional prison that you're in. Like I said earlier, when you have somebody that is your only form of survival from everything, they take away your ability to speak, to think for yourself, when you eat, what you wear, and they beat you down so far to the ground, but yet they're the only one there to give you their hand to pull you up. That form of manipulation and abuse and that type of psychological trauma is debilitating.
Yeah, they're not giving you any portion of the money, right? Because I would always wonder, like, well, how come the girls don't just pocket some of the money? But it's because they're so scared, right? That if they get caught stealing or anything like that, they'll get beat.
And I mean, and you're told, not to trust the police. Of course, you're conditioned, you're trained. And like I said, these guys are so good at what they do.
And you're at the weakest point of your life.
Right.
Mom and dad probably haven't answered your call in years.
Exactly. You have nobody. They're
else.
the only person you have, So he let me get a dog. And like, this was so important to me because this was something that loved me and I knew loved me and I loved this dog, right? It was like the only thing that brought me any happiness in such a dark, dark time in my life.
What kind of dog?
He was a Shih Tzu mix. So his name was Oreo. He was black and white. He was so cute. Anyway, so Smurf was sending me on an out call and I left. And like, sometimes I would take my dog with me. I'm not going to lie, like he was small enough to fit in my purse and I'll take him with me. So I didn't take him this time. When I come back, I couldn't even go to the bathroom without this dog, like at the door, just, I need you. And when I come home, BJ was sitting, he was our doorman. BJ was sitting there and I come home and I can't find Oreo. I'm like, where's my dog? Normally he's like right here.
When you open the door.
Right.
Yeah.
As soon as I opened the door, he wasn't there. I start looking for him and I look underneath the couch and he is there like shivering, shaking. And so I'm flipping. I'm like, what the F happened? And Smurf tried to kill my dog. I don't know, what it was. Smurf was not home at that moment. I went and I grabbed a knife and I told BJ, I was like, if you effing try to stop me from leaving, I'm going to kill you. And I got my dog and I left, because he tried to hurt the only thing that I loved. I didn't love myself anymore,
It's like John Wick.
Yeah.
Because that's all he had left.
That's
you know
all
what
I
I
had.
mean? It's not about the dog. It's that this dog represents everything else that has been taken from me.
Yeah. And BJ just looked. And so I just I grabbed my dog and I backed out of the house with the knife in my hand. Yeah.
Wow.
A week later, Smurf found me. And
wow, he found you?
Yeah.
Where?
I was hiding out at a crack,
whatever. Yeah.
Crack house. He found me, brought me back. And then 2 days later, his house gets raided.
Did he beat the shit out of you when he saw you?
Yeah. He beat the shit out of me.
He failed to mention that.
Yeah, he beat the shit out of me. He actually did a number on the side of my head and disfigured my ear really bad. And
wow.
Yeah. They raid the house. I was not at the house when the house was raided. So I get the call. So apparently there had been like a 2-year-long investigation. MBI was watching him for, human trafficking and drug trafficking.
What's MBI?
Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation. They're kind of like the HT police, but on a federal level. So they raid the house. They charge him with racketeering, conspiracy to traffic heroin, conspiracy to traffic cocaine, human trafficking of a minor.
There was a minor there?
So not at that house, but at a different house he had. Well, so there was 2 of them. So we had one working on the west side and one working on the east side. So Smurf was on the east side, Man was on the west side. But they were all an enterprise.
Are these gangs or are these just,
No.
they're just selling drugs and tricking out girls, trafficking girls?
Yeah. So there was me and 23
girls,
other women.
How much money you think each girl was bringing in a day?
At least 5,000 or 6,000
a day. Holy cow!
Yeah.
You got how many hours a day are you guys working?
Nonstop.
Like nonstop. Wow.
Nonstop.
As long as that phone rings, and it's mainly from Backpage.
Yeah,
Crazy.
Backpage or regular clients. Yeah. But if you think about that amount of money and you think about how many times that's actually happening to somebody on a daily
right
basis.
Now, in a square mile radius from here. Yeah.
Well, no. I'm saying like the girls, like what we were having to do, like how many times that happened to us in a day, that does something to you.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. But he gets arrested. I see it on the news. This is a huge, high-profile human trafficking case now out of Orlando. Like the Attorney General Pam Bondi, OPD, MBI, the state attorney's office. I mean, they're all on the news talking about the arrest of Smurf, or Keith Hamlet, aka Smurf, plus Man. And then I see my face on the screen too. I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm wanted for racketeering.
Why? Like, how are you not seen as a victim? Like, they don't see
that's the thing.
That's the thing.
I was classified as a victim, and that's the issue. And with what I do today with work, that's what we're trying to get changed. When somebody is a victim, you don't arrest them.
Yeah.
You know, but the state attorney and the police, they want to solidify their cases so much that they want to hold a charge over somebody's head so they can get them to testify.
Yeah.
They get, their nail in the coffin.
And then a lot of times these girls don't stick around. They leave town or whatever, so they don't have a witness.
Right. So they do that to keep them cooperating.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Florida law, there's charges that you can charge people with that do not require a witness. RICO is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
for people that don't know, can you explain what RICO is?
So RICO it's racketeering. Racketeering is a charge that they used to charge the mob bosses. Yeah, back in the 80s.
It's when you pose as a legitimate business.
Acting as an enterprise.
Yeah, acting as an enterprise.
Yeah. You're acting as an enterprise and obtaining money illegally.
Mm-hmm. It's like if you have like a tire shop and you're selling cocaine out the back.
They would get the mob bosses with it for like tax. When they couldn't hit them with tax evasion,
they'd hit them for racketeering.
They would hit them for racketeering.
Yeah.
So that charge has come up and is really big in HT cases now.
Mm-hmm.
So they hit me with a racketeering. I end up getting arrested. And here I am, sitting. And since this case is mostly women, the jail that I was housed in only had 9 pods for women. Now, when you have all these women and you're all on the same case, you have to keep them separated. Mm-hmm. So I was, for the first 4 months of my incarceration, I was in a cell all by myself. And I was only allowed out.
How many months?
For 4 months, 2 hours a day. And so it was one-man cells, but there was 3 other of my co-defendants in this. It was the juvenile dorm that was in there. So we would all get turns, coming out, but we could never be out together.
Yeah.
So the only person I had to talk to was the CO. And she was a Christian. And she would come in and I would talk to her and she would talk to me about the Bible.
Wow.
And she would tell me stories in the Bible, but the way she was telling it to me, it was she was such a good storyteller. And so she would tell me the story and then tell me where that was at in the Bible. And I would go back in my cell and I would read it.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Then I started praying and I don't think I was saved at that moment, but something was starting. I was eager to seek Christ and wanted to know, I craved to know him, but I hadn't been granted repentance or faith or anything like that yet. And the state attorney comes. I was assigned a victim's advocate. She used to come and see me, and I'm best friends with her to this day.
The CO?
No, the victim's advocate.
Oh, the victim's advocate.
So I was assigned a victim's advocate.
Which is what? Can you explain that?
So a victim's advocate is just somebody that, because if you have a cop or a prosecutor, they're more concerned with what they're trying to do. A victim's advocate is somebody who is there to make sure the rights of the victim are not violated. They're treated with dignity and respect. Basically, that they don't make the victim do what they don't want to do. We're a voice for them.
Gotcha.
She comes and sees me and she's like, I'm offering you an opportunity for a brand new life. And at first, I still had that street mentality. I was like, I'm not snitching,
Yeah.
I'm not snitching. And I said no. And so my attorney comes and sees me. He's like, look, this guy's going down with or without you. You might as well jump on this bandwagon. And he was like, they're going to offer you treatment. They're they're sending me away into kind of a witness protection thing out of the state of Florida. I'll get away from Orlando. And I was like, you know what? Fine, I'll do it. So I go to this safe house in rural Alabama, out in the middle of nowhere. Here I am, this, city girl from Orlando out in the sticks, driving by a Piggly Wiggly. And I'm like, what is that? I'd never seen one of those before in my life. But it was a faith-based organization, you know? So the gospel was preached and Bible study and...
Is this Dunklin?
No, it was Pell City.
Okay.
Organization's called the Well House. So I was getting treated for my trauma, but I was not getting treated for my addiction. We weren't going into 12-step recovery things or anything like that. And so I was an addict before I was a victim. So I think that piece was missing. And the first pass that I had and I went home on, I used. And I was back out in active addiction for 42 days. And those 42 days was worse than like the 16 and a half years that I was in active addiction, because by this point I knew there was another way. I didn't have to live like that anymore. And I was miserable. And when I finally got caught, I was like, thank you, Lord, because I hated. It was like when I was out there and I was back in like the dope holes and the shooting galleries and the crack houses. Like I was able to see everybody for what they really were. It was just an evil to me. It was like the Lord was giving me to see through spiritual eyes, like just what this is really representing, and this is not who I am anymore. So I go to jail, and the prosecutor wants to make an example out of me because I'm the first one that screws up her plea deal. I get sentenced to 69.45 months in the Department of Corrections, which is like 6.5 years.
Yeah.
It was crazy because like when the judge sentenced me, like I know what I heard, and I go to prison. I have a piece of paper telling me 2022 is when I'm getting out, but I don't believe it, you know? And so I automatically put an appeal in, buy me some time, figure out, because I got to figure out something. So my first year clean was in prison. And even though I wasn't exposed to any 12-step in prison, like I held on to my faith.
You were staying clean.
Yeah, and staying clean. And
there's probably massive amounts of drugs in prison.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had my bunkie fentanyl patches and Suboxone and I mean all that stuff. And I mean she's nodding out right to the left of me, and I'm just like, Lord, if I can't do this in here, I definitely can't do it out there. And so like I just stayed in my Bible, I stayed to myself. And here I am, I have like this, I'm not going to do all this time, but I'm still getting these pieces of paper and my date's only moving, 10 days a month or whatever, or 15 days. I can't even remember how the gain time works anymore. So I had put an appeal in, and so I had a call out to go to my law clerk. And so I go down there, and I'm talking to her, and I'm telling her, about my case, and I'm a victim of human trafficking. I was classified as a victim. The state attorney said in open court, I have the transcripts, that I am a victim of human trafficking, and I am in prison behind a crime that I committed because I was trafficked. That's against the law. And so we finished talking, and this other law clerk comes up to me, and she's like, listen, I wasn't trying to listen in on your conversation. She's like, but can I talk to you? I said, yeah. And so there was men who were recruiting from inside the prisons. They were looking up online, typing in random names, looking at people's EOS dates. And when they were 6 months or whatever till they get out,
they would go visit it.
They would visit them. No, they wouldn't visit them, but they would write them letters, put money on the phone, send them money, say, hey, let me come pick you up. And then they were trafficking them.
Wow. I didn't even think people, that's such a ingenious thing, but it's a really sick, fucked up thing to do. So they would type in Danielle something,
or just
whatever,
a last
Smith name, and then look up who's a female
and who looks
and
good,
then who has drug charges and who has trafficking charges, and then write them, and then get them that way. Wow, that's fucking crazy. He
got busted out of Orlando for doing it. His name was Rick Rawls. God. He only got 3 years though. He's already out. But so there was posters all over the prison, warning inmates of human trafficking, what was going on. So there was also an attorney out of a law firm that was dedicating his practice to the expungement and the release of women who were victims of human trafficking that are in prison behind being trafficked. And so one of the ways that he found clients to help was through the law clerk when people would come in. And so she's like, listen, there's this attorney. Here's a questionnaire. She's like, I want you to go back to your dorm. She's like, there's a lot of really hard questions on it because you have to prove that you're a victim of human trafficking. So you got to talk about a lot of hard things, a lot of painful stuff. She's like, I want you to fill this out. She's like, take your time. And she's like, and here's his address and mail this to him. So I said, okay, whatever. Thank you. And I go back to my dorm. I glance over it. And I mean, I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that right now. I can't feel that right now. So I go and I call my dad, and he immediately he's like, I've been waiting for your call. He's like, we got to call Tammy, my victim's advocate. He's like, she really needs to talk to you. So I said, okay. So we call her on three-way, and she's like, oh my gosh, I was at an HT conference this weekend. I met an attorney. I told him all about you. He wants you to write him. He wants to help you. And it's the same attorney that I had just gotten,
news about.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, God, it's weird. But he sets up a call with me with classification, and we talk. And by this point, so I got sentenced, and my case broke in 2015. I got sentenced in 2017. It's almost 2018. So they're finally going to trial like 3 years later. So there is no reliable witnesses. Everybody's either back on dope, or they can't find them, or they're not willing to testify. And there's a new prosecutor on the case. And so my attorney, gets with the prosecutor and says, what about Janice? And, I went into this blind. Like, they couldn't promise me anything, but by this point, my release date is 2022. I'll take 6 months.
Yeah, of course.
I don't care. So I go, and I got to face my trafficker in open court in front of a jury, tell them what he did to me, and he got sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Wow.
I mean, I think a little bit of healing happened, when I was able to face him.
Were you scared at all, like testifying in court?
Of course. I was really scared, but I had my victim's advocate there in the audience or whatever. And my dad was there too. Like, it was empowering, because he had taken any type of ability to speak up for myself, to think for myself. He had taken that from me,
And I'm sure from hundreds of other people.
Right. So to be able to look him dead in his eye and say what he did, and the things that I saw, and even with what I've just told you is just, a small portion
of course,
of what happened. It was empowering. And I think I healed a little bit that day, but there was still so much work to be done, So he goes to prison, and they drop my charges, and they vacate my sentence completely, which is great. But what now?
Now you have this addiction and trauma and all this other stuff.
So what do I do now?
How old are you at this point?
I was 34.
Okay. But when did you meet Rachel?
2013.
So you met her in 2013 in jail?
Yes.
And she stayed clean throughout that?
Oh, it was 2014 I met her. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. 2014.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, I met her in 2014.
When did you guys reconnect? Like, when did you know that she was staying clean or doing good or whatever?
So I knew she was staying clean because I saw her on Facebook. And we talked a little bit, like right after she got out. And so she was, of course, doing the good thing, and I wasn't. So what's the point of talking? Just, we have nothing in common right now. Why would I talk to you? So she was doing good. And when I got clean this time, I found her like on Facebook and sent her a friend request, and we talked, and we cried, and I told her I was clean, and she was, and I mean, this was like early on in my recovery. I was still in a program.
Yeah.
She's actually my inspiration there's a couple reasons, but she's one of them for becoming a paralegal.
That's cool.
Yeah. So,
all right, back to the story. So you get out of, your charges get dropped. And then what happens? So
I was like, I need help. I need a program. I got to get out of Orlando. The only 3 requirements are Christ-centered. They take you to meetings, and you can smoke. And then I'll go. That's all. Those are the only things that I want. At the time, my brother lived in Jacksonville, so I was like, yeah, let's do Jacksonville, because I didn't want to leave Florida because I didn't want to be too far from my family. So I come to Jacksonville, and this program, so it was founded in 2013, but it didn't open its first safe home until 2017, November of 2017. I came April 26th of 2018. So it was a baby.
Yeah, brand new program.
This
is state funded?
It's nonprofit.
Wow.
We rely solely on donations, and it's a 501c3. So, but a beautiful, like, you think you're like walking into like Martha Stewart's house or something. Like, it's, it's not like you're state funded where you're in the hood.
Yeah.
You can buy dope from across the street.
Exactly.
Type programs.
Yeah.
So, I'm there, Went through a lot of counseling, a lot of trauma counseling. And I mean, there were days that like I didn't think I was going to make it because I'm wanting to run so bad because I'm finally like opening myself up and like dealing with all of the nasty stuff on the inside that I've been running from for the past like 20 something years. And that was so hard to do it clean, to actually like face those feelings and face that trauma, face that pain, face myself, the things that I did, because yeah, I was a victim, but I victimized people too. You know what I mean? And that was hard, man. That was hard, but I stayed, and I stayed no matter what, because I wanted this. Like I wanted to stay clean. Even though I had no idea what that looked like, I wanted a life, I didn't know anything else. Like from 16 years old, I was banging dope. So I had no idea like what it meant to like pay bills and, have like, I didn't know anything, how to have a bank account, nothing. So I was like being taught everything from scratch. And like this organization, these people like loved me with the love of Christ, man. Like when I didn't love myself, and they helped me and held my hand through everything. And I've never been surrounded by people like that, I couldn't even look people in the eye when I first got there. I didn't trust anybody. I had no idea. Like, you may tell me you care about me and you want to help me, but you want something. And there was nothing like that, and they believed in me. I couldn't see how, because all I saw myself as is, trash, like damaged goods, and, just someone to be abused and taken advantage of and never seen with any worth or value or human dignity. Like I didn't see any of that. And like they saw all of that in me. They walked me through some pretty dark times, and like I ended up, going to a 12-step program and getting involved and really active in a church, and got baptized, got a sponsor, started working steps. I couldn't do like service work because I didn't have a car, but I would attend like subcommittees and participate. So I was a voting member because like I was doing everything my life depended on it, because to me it did. Whatever I had to do to stay clean, I did it. And I stayed out of relationships because I mean, I was toxic, I had nothing to offer anybody, and like relationships were always bad for me in the past, and like I couldn't pick a decent guy. My picker's broken. Look at my
track record.
Yeah, exactly. Look at my track record, man. It's horrible. But also, I wanted a strong enough foundation to stand on, so the day that relationship doesn't work out, I don't crumble.
Exactly.
And I don't go get high over it. So like I started dreaming, like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? And
Let me ask you, what was your sponsor like? Like, what are some like characteristics your sponsor had that like you were like, this is the girl?
So the first sponsor I had, I thought she was all right, but she just wasn't for me. So I broke up with her, and I got my sponsor that I have now. And I loved her presence, like who she was, her story, how committed she was to the program, her love for the program, and how she was somebody who, like, she showed the love of the program to the newcomer. She made me feel welcome. And I remember like walking up to her, I said, look, this is going to be really crazy, but I need a sponsor, and I want you to sponsor me, but you have to have a background check in order to sponsor me. She's like, all right. And I was like, really?
You asked her for a background check?
Well, no, because our place is a safe house.
Oh, gotcha. So they do background checks?
Yeah. Because the location is undisclosed, because we have, like there's still men possibly looking for these girls. So nobody can know where the house is unless you're vetted.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I didn't even think of that. That's crazy.
Yeah. She was like, okay. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, of course. And she's been my sponsor like ever since. And, I love that woman to death. And she was there when I would call because I was going to leave because of the TV, dumb shit, really stupid stuff. I made the decision. I'm like, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go. And I was like, all right, well, what do I want to do? I'm older. Like, I don't want a degree plan. It's going to take me like 5 years to graduate to get a bachelor's, because I'm going to have to work. I hate math. What can I do where I don't have to do a whole lot of math classes? So I found paralegal studies.
Nice.
And I literally built my degree plan around how many math classes I would have to take. And also, in a way, I was like, how funny is this? And how I got like internal joy from this. I can laugh at you. I'm an ex-convict, an ex-criminal, an ex-drug addict, and I'm studying law.
Yeah.
There
you go.
That was my haha moments. So I did that. Got an amazing opportunity. An attorney with, I had no employment history, let me work at his firm part-time, started off. I was going to school, and crazy to me.
Will they do background checks on you before you apply for jobs?
It depends. So this was a small firm, so no.
Okay.
But like big firms with like an HR department, yes, they will. So I start working for him, and I'm doing probate and guardianship law and learning that. And he eventually asked me to come on full time. And like now I'm like, I'm killing it. I'm a 4.0 GPA in school. I'm making straight A's on the president's list every semester. I'm starting to go back into the jails and like help other women and share my story in front of, I served on a panel down in Tampa with MBI, Pasco County Sheriff, the state attorney's office, and a whole bunch of public defenders, and like to talk about human trafficking and the experience that I had with the criminal justice system and how it did me justice, but it didn't do me justice. Speaking in front of a whole bunch of pastors in the community, sharing my story, sharing my hope, sharing my redemption in Christ. And that's another thing, like after a while, like my hunger and my thirst for the Lord and like for his word, grew so much. And, sharing the gospel with people, because I think like at the time, like when I was being trafficked, like, I wanted to die and I wanted someone to save me or something, but I wasn't thinking about my eternity, and me with who I am now. And like, it talks about it in the Bible, like we can look outside and God's glory is displayed all around us. Look at all of creation, You look at the trees, you look at the oceans, that's not just some cosmic explosion. That is something that is created by a creator. I know that even though that those things happen to me, like the Lord has turned that around for good because of what I do today. I work with victims. I'm a victims advocate now.
So now you're a victims advocate?
I'm a victims advocate now.
And you're really close with your old victims advocate?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love that's. Yeah,
wow.
We're really close.
How did she get into it?
She does it voluntarily. Like she
just goes like a regular.
Well, so she goes into the jails and screens for trafficking.
But was she trafficked herself? Mm-mm. She's just like a good person.
Yeah, she loves Christ.
Wow. Oh, she's a super Christian.
Yeah, she loves the Lord.
Wow.
And that's what I do today, and I work for amazing organization on the anti-trafficking advocacy. I'm the survivor leader on the Call to Arms Coalition. So right now we're just in Jacksonville, but we're getting ready to bring our model of our program into other states because of what we're doing is working. Like people are being restored. People are healing, with the model of our program and how we're doing it. I bought my first home last November.
Congrats.
Yeah. About to graduate college.
Awesome. With a bachelor's?
No, so it's an associate's in paralegal studies.
And you're a paralegal now still?
Well, so right now I'm a national legal advocate.
Okay.
And I'm a victims advocate and survivor leader for an organization here.
What do you see now that's going on in human trafficking that is like how is it still like so much work to do? Like what are things like people should look out for, or like way that people are setting up human trafficking like these days that you're seeing?
So I would love to see, I guess, advocacy on the demand side. We're constantly arresting the victims. Yes, we're arresting the traffickers when we can get to them, but the buyers, what I would love to see, and this is just my crazy vision, how we have like a sex trafficking registry? I'd love to see a John registry. Like you have to register as somebody who has purchased somebody for sex. Not only that, but you have to pay money, and that money that you pay not only for your supervision, but for your fines goes towards victims and organizations that rescue victims out of trafficking. I want to see harsher punishments. I want to see more in the porn industry, because porn fuels trafficking. Dismantling and shutting down Pornhub and all the other sites that promote that. I don't think people understand pornography and what it does, because it gives men an unrealistic view of what sex is. There was a interview, or it was an article that I read, and it was a 18-year-old boy, and he had a 16-year-old girlfriend, and they had, and the boyfriend had an addiction to porn, and they had sex for the first time. And when she came home, she had bruises and marks around her throat. And so the parents saw it, called the police. She was ashamed to say, I had sex with him, and they arrested him for raping her. But what happened was, that's the type of porn that he was watching, and he thought that that's what was normal, you know? So I would want to see something more on the demand side, with men, letting them actually know, because in their mind, they're only seeing and wanting what they want as far as their desires, right? They have no idea the woman behind that camera and what that lifestyle is actually doing to her mind, body, and spirit. The trauma behind that. You know, there's been a lot of interviews with former porn stars that will tell you stories like, you don't see it on camera. They're taking out and cutting out, you know, the rape, her crying. I mean, all that. And I want to see more survivor-led advocacy. I mean, there's so many things, but I want people to know that it's not something that happens just overseas. You know, this is happening where you shop, where you eat, where you go to school, where you work. You know, we're hidden in plain sight. I remember one of my girls, and I'll never forget this, and like, it resonated with me so much. And it's just like, she said, you pass me every day and you don't know. And I can remember like being out in the open and trying to talk to somebody with my eyes, just begging them, help me, you know, just help me. And it's something that you can't ignore. It can happen to anybody. You know, there is a specific class that are more vulnerable than most, but it can happen to anyone, you know, and don't let it be to where, until it happens to someone, to someone you love or you, that you care about it. You know, education and awareness is key. And that's what we do a lot of. We do a lot of trainings with, you know, police and public defenders, and I mean, anybody who will listen, anybody, you know.
Well, I appreciate you so much. You have an amazing story. Definitely, you know, impacted me. So I appreciate you for coming on the show, taking the time to do it. You know, hopefully people see this and it raises awareness.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 888-699-9395 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com.